File 2. Listening 1. Speaker 1.
From the age of about 7 till I was 16, I went to an all-girls school in North London in Highgate, which was really good fun, but it was a bit of a shame that it was all girls. Then when I was 16, I went to a boarding school in the countryside, which in fact was a boys' boarding school that took girls in the sixth form, and I really enjoyed it. I was quite rebellious at school, but I was never too bad. I wasn't expelled or suspended or anything, but I just sort of stood up for what I believed in. School was a fun experience. It's many years of your life, but I look back at it with quite fond memories.
Speaker 2.
My favourite toy as a child was a football game called Subbuteo Table Soccer, and this was like a religion. It was all these footballers. Looked ridiculous actually because the ball was bigger than the players, but they were all beautifully painted in every team's kit, and I had about 12 different teams that my father thought was ridiculous because you could only play with 2 at the same time. But I loved them. I mean, just as good as playing the game was setting them all out on the pitch before a tournament started. And I built out of balsa wood an entire stadium to go around the outside. So with the Subbuteo floodlights as well, and this beautiful golden pitch and all these teams laid out. Wow, it was like the World Cup.
Speaker 3.
I was raised on Enid Blyton books, and Enid Blyton's very preoccupied with school life, and there's a whole range of books all about boarding school. And I desperately wanted to go, and eventually my parents sent me, not because I'd forced them to, but because they were in the forces, and so they needed somewhere for me to be based. So I had all these amazing kind of expectations about it, and when I got there, it just wasn't like it at all. It was like prison. It was just the most miserable, archaic, horrible place. And I'll never forget my first night there. And I'd been told how brave I had to be, and that, you mustn't cry, and you had to be grown up and respectful of everybody else, and cheerful, and be a generally good girl. And I remember lying in my bed in the dormitory, and there were 10 of us in there, and getting into bed and lying there, and suddenly being overwhelmed with homesickness, just feeling terrible, and starting to cry, but trying to cry really quietly because it wasn't the done thing.
Speaker 4.
Yeah, I went to a boarding school, and one of the strange things we used to have to do was play at toy soldiers, the thing called the Combined Cadet Force. And one of the strangest things we did were night operations, where we were taken out at night and spent the whole night finding our way to somewhere or trying to follow a map or something. But it was great fun because we all used to get lost on purpose and do what we wanted, really. But there was one occasion when we got seriously lost, and we were walking through a whole lot of back gardens, kind of going over people's fences. And we got into one back garden, and a sash window shot up, and this voice said, "Who's there?" And we all frozen. "Who's there, I say?" We just froze. And the next thing was, "Mabel, get my gun!" And we were absolutely terrified, and we ran for our lives.
Speaker 5.
Well, I loved dolls when I was little, particularly Cindy dolls and Barbie dolls. And my sister was a lot older than me, so I spent a lot of time playing by myself with these dolls. And I just treasured them so much. And we only got toys at Christmas or birthdays. So they really were valued, and I really looked after them. And I eventually had quite a good collection of, clothes and little accessories and things for their little houses and all the rest of it. And I always said, I'll keep these. If I ever have a daughter of my own, she'll be able to play with them. And then I did have a daughter of my own, and I went up into my mum's attic and got the Barbies down that were all very carefully, lovingly wrapped up and packed in a box. Gave them to my daughter, who broke 2 of them within 3 minutes. But I think the thing is that, things were valued a lot more when I was little. Things were more expensive, and you treasured them. Whereas I think nowadays perhaps children get a lot more and they're not so special or appreciated.
File 2. Listening to.
In today's advice slot, relationship counsellor Kate Fine talks about what can happen when a long-term relationship comes to an end.
Of course, whatever the reason it happens, the end of a long-term relationship is very hard. One reason for this is that you have to completely change your thinking about the future. It's not just the immediate pain of breaking up that hurts, it's the fact that the way you had seen things developing no longer applies. You'll have had a view of how your life would develop over the next few years, but that's not going to happen now, and it can be very scary to rethink it all. Most people's reactions to a breakup come in 3 stages. The first stage is a state of shock and disbelief, when you can't really make sense of it all. You may even find yourself unconsciously thinking that it hasn't really happened, and that things are carrying on as normal. Lots of people act as if the relationship is still going on during this phase, and though this may seem odd to other people, it's perfectly normal. Another aspect of this first stage is going over in your own mind what led to the breakup, and thinking of ways it could have been avoided. This is the what-if stage, when you keep analysing the end of the relationship and thinking, what if I'd done this, and what if I hadn't done that? This kind of thing often forms the main topic of conversations with other people, and it's all part of the stage of making sense of what's happened. The second stage is often the longest one, and it's characterised by feelings of anger and panic. Some people try to suppress these feelings, but you shouldn't be afraid of letting yourself have these feelings, or of showing them, because this is an essential part of the healing process. It's a good idea to be aware that these feelings may haunt you for quite some time. You might think that they're never going to go away, but they do in the end. People also sometimes feel that it's wrong for them to remain upset for more than a few weeks, but the reality is that this stage can last far longer than that, and you shouldn't be hard on yourself if that's the case. The final stage is when you start to come to terms with the fact the relationship is over and realise that you'll be fine and able to move on with your life. One day it'll occur to you that you haven't thought about it for a while. But beware, you might make some progress for a while and then go backwards again. Ups and downs are the norm at this stage. But you can tell yourself at this stage that the last bad feelings will soon pass.